The Spot Track Podcast, talking sports contracts, the salary cap, and business of sports.
Welcome to another edition of the SpotTrack.com podcast. Kevin Sylvester, Paul Peck, and of course the founder of SpotTrack.com, the place you go to find out all the great contract information in pro sports. Mike Giannetti here, and we have an interesting week here. Settle in for the next 2 hours, okay? Maybe not quite that long, but we're going to talk about career earnings by sport because Mike, it's kind of a slow time right now for signings and such.
Yeah, there's plenty of sports on and available to watch, but in terms of the business side of it, it's a little bit of a lull in terms of, baseball hasn't really kicked into its free agency, and basketball is active, and football is in the middle of the season. So yeah, in terms of the breaking news financially, there's really not too much out there. So it's a nice time to kind of reflect and kind of see, how much these athletes are earning as a whole.
Yeah, and here's the warning for everybody. The numbers are going to jolt you, and again, it's an unrealistic world of what pro athletes make. So the numbers shouldn't jolt you if you follow sports enough to know that the numbers are so far out of the realm of what normal people earn. But you're going to be even jolted more when Mike starts to talk to you about what career earning numbers for some of these players are.
Well, and these, just another asterisk or warning here, these numbers are the reason why travel sports for kids are out of control right now, because everybody thinks their kid's going to go on and do these things. But hey, have fun. Okay, let's start with baseball and, the top all-time earner in baseball. And no surprise, this guy's recently retired, but no real surprise because of that Yankee contract.
The Yankee contract. Well, was it the Yankee contract or was it the Texas Rangers contract originally? Wasn't it the same deal,
it was
Mike?
All of the above.
Can I do it in my John Sterling voice? Can I?
Have
Alex Rodriguez.
That's an A-bomb from A-Rod.
Says an A-Rod is made $437 million. That's a lot of steaks at Del Frisco's.
Yeah.
All right. Anyway, sorry, Mr. Sterling. I am a fan of what he does here. But A-Rod, $437 million.
Yeah, that's the big enchilada. That's the number, with this discussion that really every athlete in all of these sports is reaching for. And it's not easily obtained. I did some research here for this, and I'm not sure there's a player out there, currently who has an angle to get to $437 million. You mentioned the Texas contract, the Yankees contract. That's the thing, right? These players, especially in baseball, where you've got a lead up to where you can make money, right? You're making about $500,000 for the first couple of seasons. That's just how it works. The fact that A-Rod got two ridiculous contracts, the fact that he changed teams. And
and remember, he was a pro at age, 18, 19? So, he had like 5 years of earning that most players don't.
Which is actually a nice discussion when we get to a couple other sports as well. That is part of it. He was great early, but he stuck around for a ton of years. But that second massive contract, that's just not happening anymore. It may happen soon. It may happen soon because I think people are understanding, teams and agents and players, that number one, that 10-year contract when you're 25 years old does two things. Sure, it pays you a lot of money, but 5 years into it, you've already outplayed that number because other players around you, have already reached way higher, and it gives you no flexibility to move around, which we're seeing with Giancarlo Stanton right now. Very limited flexibility, even though he's got a ton of money allocated to him in that contract. So that A-Rod number is gigantic, and even in this day and age, I'm not sure someone's going to get there.
You literally just said a $250 million contract was a bargain.
Yeah, we're going to use terms like just and only, and that's going to be only applied to these players and not the real world.
A-Rod is the top all-time earner. Again, that 437.1. That 0.1 matters to somebody, his accountant probably. But I have a question for both of you.
Yeah.
Who has earned more, A-Rod or the women he's dated combined?
Ooh, good question.
You got Madonna in there, right?
I'm not
J-Lo? I would have to think it's the women.
I would hope so.
Just Madonna alone is probably comparable to A-Rod.
Yeah, it's a good question, but I can't answer it, thankfully.
Okay. And I'm probably missing a few in there, right? There was some, wasn't there some?
That would
Kate
be
Hudson.
that would be an affiliate version of SpotTrack.com that would track
our sister station.
Right, the sister station tracking those kinds of contracts.
Homework assignment: career earnings for Madonna, J-Lo, and Kate Hudson.
All right,
right.
Tweet me at SpotTrack if you know the answer.
There you go.
Let me add one thing to A-Rod. Don't forget, That's $437 million without $22 million that he lost to suspension 2 years ago. So he's a $450 million athlete in terms of what he could have been making. The numbers are ridiculous, and like I said, the really interesting part of it is that we're in a day where numbers are massive, and I don't think anybody around us is going to come close to that right now.
Right. Now give out the top active earner and the potential earnings guy at currently playing.
So as of right now, we're looking at CC Sabathia, who's earned $246 million. So you're talking about almost $200 million less than Alex Rodriguez for the highest active earner right now. Now, when you kind of hash out contracts that have been signed, and we look at future earnings that are guaranteed, Miguel Cabrera is set to reach $412 million. So he's the closest thing to A-Rod's earnings in terms of potential. He's going to make that in 2024. He'll be 41. He's probably not going to be playing anymore. Let's be realistic. He's having back problems. He can barely, stay active.
Another
right
guy
now.
that started very young in his career, at a very young age,
and he got that big second extension with Detroit, which is rare. So you're talking about these massive earners. That's what you're looking for. You're looking for decent money early on, obviously, then a nice contract, and then another big contract, and that's how that structure kind of works.
Well, you mentioned so Cabrera is on track to also surpass the $400 million. Stanton's not, and what about Bryce Harper?
No, well, Harper's the outlier. Harper's the one we're all looking at here because we're seeing these numbers of 400 and 500 million for this contract. I can't get there. I can't put his production at 400 million, not even close, based on what's going around the league. I can get him to about 30 million a year, which if it's 10 years, that's 300 million. He's made 20 million right now. He's going to make another 20 this year. So you're looking at 340, in the next 10 years, 11 years of Bryce Harper's career. So he's got a chance. He's got a chance to get there. But he needs to average 30 million a year until he's 40 years old.
Oh, wow. That really
to
puts
to A-Rod. Yeah, that's what we're looking at. That's why I'm saying I can't even look at him and realistically say he's definitely going to do it.
No surprise that the bulk of the career earnings baseball guys have all played and worn the pinstripes.
Yeah, the top 4 all-time earners. We're talking A-Rod, Derek Jeter, CC Sabathia, and Carlos Beltran. So all significant pieces of the Yankees over the last few years, most of which, that's where the big money came from as well. The Yankees were shelling out money, and these guys,
A name on here, and a name you might not expect. And I have a question for Paul after this. But Adrian Beltre, who is 9th all time in earnings, just over $200 million, he'll be at 220 after next season, age 39. And Paul, this guy's a Hall of Famer. He's got Hall of Fame numbers. Is he a Hall of Famer?
Well, my first inclination is not to think of him as a Hall of Famer.
No, right?
But he's had a nice, really long career, and he's been a very good, productive player for a number of teams and a number of careers. But
over
my
3,000 hits.
first thought is, Adrian Beltre's not a Hall of Famer, is he?
So you know what I thought of when I put this on the list? He's sort of Darrelle Revis himself, right? He sort of maximized his earnings. He's maximized his production at the very right time. So that whenever that contract was up and he needed something new, he either got a huge extension from his current team or he went shopping elsewhere and got a big extension from somebody else. So everything just sort of fell right for him. Not to mention, he's 38 years old and still playing good ball. So obviously longevity is a huge part of these numbers. But he sort of maximized the ability to make the money at the right time.
Always a free agent, because some guys are completely the opposite. They're never a free agent when the year that they could have made their most money at the position they play, there's nobody better. They'd have been the best player there. So you're saying that every time there was a shortage of third baseman, Beltre was a free agent.
He certainly worked the system well, and you're seeing that with some other guys across the sports, which we'll get into as well. But yeah, he's a surprise top 10 guy.
He's kind of, he's like a consultant. Right, he just comes in, makes a lot of money, and gets the heck out of there.
He plays a pretty good third base. Let's not sell him short.
Right. Yes, he does. All right, next sport, Kevin.
NBA. Now, come on. There have to be, this is where the most money's got to be at, the NBA.
It's
and
coming.
Not Major League Baseball.
It's coming, right? So,
okay.
So obviously we've talked plenty on this podcast about, the money that exists right now and is coming in the next couple of years.
It's not LeBron, by the way.
No. The all-time earner is Kevin Garnett, which shouldn't surprise you. We talked about coming into the league early. This is a guy who came out of high school. I believe he was the first to do that.
Yes.
Well, aside from Moses Malone way back in the day.
Right. I'm not old enough for that.
Sadly, I am. But you missed out on Moses Malone. He was awesome.
He was awesome.
All right.
$334 million. That's where Garnett stands. And you mentioned LeBron. Obviously, LeBron is going to get there. It looks as though it's going to take about 3 years to do that. He's about a little over $100 million away. He's probably going to do a 1-year deal next year at $35 million. So he's on track in 3 years to become the career earnings leader. The highest active earner right now is Dirk Nowitzki out in Dallas, who has done it all in one team. He's at $246 million. He's probably going to walk off into the sunset after this. So, he's probably maxed out. But as it stands right now, he's the leader in the clubhouse in terms of NBA active players.
LeBron makes more off the court than he does on the court.
Oh, there's no question. And I wish I could include those kind of numbers in here. Obviously, that's a part of these guys' earnings in terms of their life as a whole, but we keep it on the court in terms of those numbers.
I love how you dived into the fact of how many of the high earners played 4 years in college, never played. You talked about Garnett and LeBron never having played college. That's an interesting little subset too.
It's something we've been looking at over the last couple of years because of the discussion of the one and done with college and NBA and how that may be changing in the next maybe 12 to 18 months. I thought it was interesting that these top 10 earners all time, there's a mixed bag, right? So 5 of them never went to college, which you should expect those to be the highest earners, right? Those guys had the ability to make money at 18 and 19, where other guys had to wait until their 20s.
See, college is not for everybody.
It's not for everybody. No. If you can shoot a free throw, right?
It's a trade. It's like a plumber. Anyhow,
so only 2 of them though were one and dones. 2 of them played for 2 years, and then one played all 4 years of college, and obviously we know who that is.
This is a great. Well, I don't know. Do you
Really?
think that's a slam dunk that everybody would know who the 4-year college guy is?
I don't think everybody would know who the 4-year guy is.
Not that he's not a great player, but it's so rare to have seen a great player that played 4 years of college these days.
He's probably the best player you would not pick on a starting lineup. If you went all-time NBA, you would not pick this guy to be in your starting lineup.
He was one of the most boringly impressive players in the history of the NBA.
That's a good way to put it. We're talking about Tim Duncan of the Spurs at $242 million, the highest earning guy that went 4 years to college.
That's right. Yep. And
Wake Forest, by the way, for those
correct.
wondering.
And it'll be interesting to see how long that stands because, how many players are sticking through 4 years of college and then playing, 15, 18 years in the NBA after that. So it's an impressive feat, and it's one that may stand for quite a while. But with those top 10 guys, I'll tell you what surprised me, and just maybe me not following back in the day, but Shaquille O'Neal played 2 years of college at LSU.
Right.
He stayed an extra year because, I think he was so raw coming into college, and all he was doing was dunking, is that he needed that second year.
Well, he had that game against Duke where Christian Laettner ate his lunch.
Yeah.
It was as a home game for LSU, and Laettner just took him to school.
I just can't imagine this day and age a guy like Shaquille O'Neal in college on the national networks every week.
Yeah, and wouldn't it be amazing?
In college another year.
I want to say Chris Jackson was his point guard.
Yeah, I believe LSU, absolutely.
It might have been his senior year, the year Shaq was a freshman, and they also had Stan Roberts. Didn't they have Stan Roberts?
Yes, I don't remember.
Stanley Roberts,
right.
And I think they played together again in the pros with the Orlando Magic.
Right.
You can fact check this all you want here, but it makes for a good story.
Who's the one unexpected basketball name, Mike?
Yeah, so this one might even be more so than Beltray. The name on the list here is Joe Johnson, who is 9th all time with $214 million earned. This guy, he has what is widely regarded as one of the worst contracts in the history of the NBA. He signed a 6-year, $123 million contract with Atlanta back in 2010, which back then those contracts weren't coming like they are right now. This was a big deal for a guy who a lot of people looked at and said, "Who?" Right? Mm-hmm. I mean that was a "who are you kidding" contract. So it still holds up that way. He's in the last year of it. It'll be tough for him to get anything more than the veteran minimum next year. So he's certainly trailing off in terms of these earnings going forward. But he's top 10 right now, and a lot of people would be surprised by that, I think.
By the way, it was Stanley Roberts and
Very
Shaquille.
good.
They had 2 7-footers in the starting lineup, and Chris Jackson, who went on to become Mahmoud Abdul-Rauf, was a point guard who was the leading scorer on that
Right.
team.
All right, how about now let's go to the NFL, where I think everybody would expect that the bulk of the career earnings guys in the league are going to be quarterbacks.
Yeah, 13 of the top 15 all-time earners are quarterbacks, led by Peyton Manning at $248 million, but not for long. Peyton's not going to hold that mark too long. He's his brother's second, and his brother is the top active earner, obviously, with $219 million.
Is his brother a Hall of Famer, by the way?
That's a different podcast.
Okay. I just thought I'd throw it out there. Because,
Is
If
Eli
you're
even gonna
strictly
be the quarterback
basing
of the
it
Giants
on
next
Super
year?
Bowls, then yes. If you're basing it on a body of work, I
Well-
think it's a lot less of a slam dunk.
I would agree with that.
I think the better discussion is, will he be the quarterback of the Giants next season?
That is another future podcast.
Well, if he's not, you could tell us what the contract ramifications are, right?
We
Because it'll
will.
probably be a
Right.
release situation. Or would
Right.
it be a trade?
Now,
think
the
there's a
reason
possibility.
reason why Tom Brady isn't there yet is because Tom Brady has always been willing to take less than market rate in order to make his team a better team.
So we're going to take one of these episodes and actually break down Tom Brady and his earnings situation as a whole. But yeah, for lack of time here, Brady's essentially done a 2-year deal with a signing bonus and minimum salaries. That's just how he's done it. So he's always had fresh money in his pocket, but not maximum money in his pocket, and that's why he stands 50. He needs $51 million to catch Peyton Manning, which would be 3 years at about $17 million a year. So it's doable. You know, if he wants to play till 45, you know, that's certainly a doable thing, but it's going to be tough for him to hit that 250 mark.
Yeah, and here the next one for you, Mike, and this is a great question to stump your buddies with, because you mentioned 13 of the 15 all-time NFL salary earners are quarterbacks. Ask your buddies if you think they can name the only 2 non-quarterbacks in the top 15 list, and I know the answer, Kevin, but you don't.
I know one of them, I think.
Okay?
Darrelle Revis? Is he one of them?
That is not correct, but
No.
good guess.
Really?
He's close, but
Wow.
I mean, if he plays next year on that Kansas City contract, I think he will get into the top 15, but he's currently 18th right now. So there's
We'll stump you. We'll make you sweat this one a little bit, Kevin. One's a wide receiver and one's a defensive end.
See, I was going to say defensive end would be the other spot.
Because that's the next big, that and left tackle are the next big
But
high-paying
you
positions.
have to think it's a Von Miller. Would he be?
Not
Not
yet.
in the league long enough.
Yeah, not yet.
All right, then.
But
Dwight
you're in
Freeney.
the right
Dwight
dir-
Freeney.
Good guess, too, but
All
not
right,
correct.
I give up.
Not correct.
Both are active.
A
too.
guy who might very well have been on this list had he chosen to go to the NBA instead.
Interesting.
There's a good hint for you. He might have, that Carolina blue that he wore might have gotten him into the NBA.
Julius Peppers?
Julius
Got it.
Peppers.
Julius Peppers. Wow.
Right.
You got it.
And then the only other non-offensive player in that top 15 career earnings list is a long-time, all-time great wide receiver who's still playing.
One of the all-time great receivers who's guy in Arizona there, Fitzgerald.
Correct.
Yep.
Okay.
Those are the
Who's a
two.
great guy, by the way. If you ever meet Larry Fitzgerald, he is just a super guy. He'll actually have a conversation with you. Won't just be like, all right, hey, great to meet you. Then I'm just speaking from experience.
So that's a great question to throw at your buddies at the bar next time and see if they have any clue, because I think
Julius
it's an awesome
Peppers.
question. Yeah.
Really? Julius Peppers.
Just longevity and the right position.
And
That's a position that pays.
he's like signed 3 pretty good sized free agent deals too,
Yeah.
right? When he left Carolina
Well, he
to
had
go to the Bears, and then when he signed with the Packers.
Oh, so all right. I thought it was Packers and Bears, but
No, it was Bears and then
Packers.
Packers.
Okay.
Yeah. What else from the NFL jumped out at you, Mike?
Well, just really what's coming, right? So obviously the salaries are growing and these contracts are getting a little bit more sizable in terms of the signing bonus and things like that. So, you've got obviously Matthew Stafford's massive deal, and, Stafford's going to make this, he's going to become the top dog fairly soon here. We're talking about, a situation where I think by 2020, Matthew Stafford is atop that list, but he may not be there for long because we've got situations where Matt Ryan and Aaron Rodgers both need contracts in about a year or two. And, just the way things are hashing out, you're talking $30 million per year contracts for those guys. So
I was going to ask, do you think we'll ever see, or how long will be to see a $300 million career player in the NFL? Given the way their contracts are and how, the bonuses matter more and they're not always what they seem,
Yeah.
the contracts.
It's an interesting question. I think it's coming. Obviously, I think these guys are going to be close. I think Aaron Rodgers has a chance to do that. I think the next wave, maybe that Goff Wentz wave, if they stay on the track they're on, they've got a really nice chance to do that. I wouldn't say that much about Winston and Mariota. I think that's maybe a lower class in terms of how those extensions will pan out. But Ryan and Rodgers have a chance. They're certainly going to pass Peyton and get above that 250 mark, but 300 is not within reach.
A sport you're never going to see a $300 million player is the National Hockey League.
Yeah, but before that, I want our on the unexpected player. And if you were listening to a previous edition of the SpotTrack.com podcast, we talked about this guy as the all-time great undrafted earner.
Right. So the reason, the fact that he's on this list may not surprise you, but the fact that he was undrafted makes this impressive, right? We're talking about Tony Romo, in his 15th, he's 15th all time with 127 million right now, right? And he did that in 14 seasons. But what you have to remember is, as an undrafted player, he made almost nothing to start, right? In his first 4 years, he made $4 million. So he made $123 million in his last 10 seasons with Dallas,
right?
And really walked away from a couple as well. So he had the opportunity to jump up to that 135 mark, but 127 for an undrafted player, it's certainly top for the undrafted guys, and right now it's top 15 all time.
All right.
Now to where we'll jolt you with the bad comparisons, right?
Well, you just look at what max contracts are in the National Hockey League. Had they not gone to a cap system, you would have had a player. I go back to 1 year, the Rangers, they were throwing out $20 million contracts, like they were nothing. Now with the cap the way it is, I mean, the top players, the McDavid contract, $12.5 million per season. Yeah. So, I mean, Crosby, his next contract will be interesting to see what it is. But even then, you look at Crosby's career earnings; they're not going to blow you away.
No. I mean,
relatively speaking.
We're obviously talking about Jaromir Jagr at the top of this list. The guy's played 70 years in the league. So
and this is just NHL money. This does not include KHL money.
No, right. Good point.
Because he played 2 years over there. Correct.
Good point. Yeah. So he's making $1 million this year. It's probably going to be his last year. So we're looking at $135 million for Jagr. That's the ceiling right now. Which in the grand scheme of things, compared to everything else, it's pretty low. It's a
it would be ranked in the hundreds of the other sports
easily. I mean, we're just talking Tony Romo made $127 million, with 14 years at the Cowboys. So 135 is the bar. Sidney Crosby's made $109 million so far. He's gonna be the ceiling very quickly here in the next couple of years. So even on his current contract before that next one kicks in. So there's more coming. I mean, we're gonna see that 150 plus mark very shortly. But even a guy like McDavid, right? He'll have $105 million by 2025 at the end of this big extension he just signed. He'll be 28 years old, so he'll certainly have a chance to double that and get to the $200 million mark. But that's probably the ceiling going into the next 10, 15 years. I mean, $200 million is probably where we're going to be in 15 years in terms of the NHL top earner. So the numbers are way lower. It's just that kind of a league. It's structured with the cap that way. It doesn't allow teams to overpay for positions, even though, they probably should be. I mean, guys like McDavid should probably be making, closer to $20 million a year based on his production versus other players, which is really how, the NFL and that works. That's why we're able to evaluate those guys the way we do, because we're able to see the gap in production between them and the average player of that position. So, the hard cap in the NHL, the lack of revenue and the money that goes to the players in terms of their salaries, it just really keeps these guys in a pigeonhole.
Looking at position-wise, goaltender, and there's one player that's in the top 15 right now.
Yeah, just one. It's Roberto Luongo. He's still active. He's still able to make a little bit more here to raise that number, but that's it. I mean, the goaltender may be the most important position in hockey, but it's certainly not paid that way, and those guys don't play long enough generally to crack this kind of a list in terms of their career.
Defensemen play a long time.
Yeah. Most of them, yeah. I mean, we've got a couple that really have a chance to make some serious money here in terms of guys like Shea Weber, who, for those who don't know, signed a 14-year, $110 million contract and was traded.
So, that's right. Yeah.
So it's an interesting league. It really is. There's a lot going on. It's just that the numbers aren't big and sexy and flashy to kind of put out there.
But going to last week's podcast, Shea Weber got hosed in that trade because he was playing all his games in Nashville, Tennessee, and he goes from a state income-free tax, a state in Tennessee to Quebec, which I think they take 89% of his money. Like, I mean,
not to mention it's a million miles away.
Yeah, it's it's a great. It's he can't go to the grocery store in Montreal because they're just huge rock stars up there. But yeah, the tax. We'll have to ask Mr. Raiola to figure out how much money he is paying more in taxes to play in Montreal than he would have if he stayed in Nashville. Yeah. And I bet you over the life of that contract, boy. It's got to be at least $1 million
or $20
well, at least
dollars,
I'm going to say no. It's seven figures more for sure. I'm just saying from the tax savings.
Right. Sure. How about our unexpected NHL earner?
Yeah, really just a name that maybe you haven't heard in a couple of years because he really kind of fizzled out at the end of his career. But Vinny Lecavalier played 19 seasons, And similar to our discussion of these kind of underlying players, he just kind of banked at the right time. He had 3 really nice contracts with a couple of different teams. He kind of played the free agent market well. He was bought out. He was traded. So there were some situations where he got to a new team and they liked what they saw and they threw a ton of money at him. And obviously this was back in the day when that was still possible. But he made a really nice big chunk of money, and he's second all time. So, and until, guys like, Ovechkin and Malkin and those guys kind of jump forward a little bit, he's going to be number 2 for a couple of years now.
His Ferrari was, that he parked in the back of the arena in Tampa was number 1. Every player would look at that car.
So you knew he was number 2 at that point.
You knew Vinny Lecavalier was making bank. Again, a tax-free state in Florida. All right, cool stuff there. You can check out all the information at Spotrac.com.
Today's Cap Fact.
All right, now it is time for our Cap Fact, and it's never too early, Mike, to start looking ahead, particularly as it relates to the NFL salary cap to next year, because you're starting to get a feel via Spotrac.com of which teams are heading into 2018 in good shape against the cap and which may have to do some maneuvering to get under the cap.
Yeah, so this is the time of year where we take our cap tracker tool on Spotrac, and we basically include any additional cap space from this year into next year. So we're able to kind of get a snapshot look at, just how much projected cap space these teams may have heading to 2018. And some of the numbers are pretty outstanding. I mean, we're setting up for what could be a pretty crazy offseason in terms of free agency and trades and obviously the draft. But, we've got a couple of teams who sit at the bottom of this list right now who you see numbers like this. And what I'm thinking is players are getting cut, players are getting traded. And these are not bottom of the barrel teams. These are legitimate teams. We're talking about the Chiefs, we're talking about the Steelers, and we're talking about the Eagles. They may be the best team in football right now. So they've got cap trouble in terms of how their team is structured next year. Now, the good thing is those teams don't have to sign a ton of players, right? They've got, 39 to 45 players under contract next year. So restructures, things like that, extensions to make their cap hits a little bit lower. There's ways to get around that for these teams in terms of getting ready for next year and getting under that number for the start of 2018. But there are teams, who have less than 10 million who don't have a ton of players and maybe don't like the players they have. And there's going to be a lot of movement. Teams like the Dolphins, teams like the Panthers, teams like, Dallas sounds like, boy, they might just blow it up and start over from scratch. And they don't have a ton of cap space to do that right now. So
they could do that with the owner too.
They could. Yeah. Maybe the coach.
Luck. Yeah.
So, there's the bottom of the cap tracker tool we have is really an interesting place to start because you're looking at teams who definitely have to do something to get ready for next year. If you look at the top of the list,
sure,
these teams don't have to do anything. These teams can field 2 teams themselves right now. I mean, we're talking about the 49ers and the Browns are looking at $110 million in cap space right now without doing anything.
That's crazy.
Just the start.
Let's hope that's part of the rebuilding process that they're underway and not just the fact that they won't flat out spend any money or have any good players who are worthy of being paid. The one interesting thing about the teams with the most cap space is the one that you didn't mention, which is the Colts. But they're paying a quarterback. Now, there's a question whether he's ever going to be healthy enough to be the quarterback that they're paying for, but it surprises me to see that a team like the Colts has a ton of cap space and they're paying pretty high market level rates to Andrew Luck.
The Colts, I think even though to the press and to the reporters, they sort of played this off like, yeah, Andrew Luck's going to be ready and we're going to have a great season. But then they started releasing everybody, right? You started to see defensive players fall off the board. You started to hear, all of their major players were at the trade deadline on the trade block. So the writing was on the wall for this, and they sort of realized maybe 4 or 5 weeks into the season, hey, this is going to be a dumpster fire, and we need to start getting ready for what could be a big 2018 for us. They could get out of Andrew Luck's contract if they want to. I mean, the way that it's structured, it's not they're not sandbagged into 3-4 years down the road with him. They could certainly make a big splash. I don't think they're going to do that. I think they're obviously going to give Luck every chance possible to get back into the number 1 position. But they could trade a player like Jacoby Brissett. They could trade for another quarterback if they're
and
really
they may
not
have a top
sure.
5 pick.
And they're going to have a huge draft pick, to fill a need, whether that be the quarterback position or something else. But yeah, they did a nice job in the last 10 weeks or so to kind of identify that this was not going to be their year. And, they're looking at $84 million in potential cap space now, plus a top draft pick. Plus, they've got a quarterback, like you said. So, yeah, of the top 5 teams, they may be in the best approach.
Well, another example of a new GM coming in
That's
and
exactly right.
trying to clean things out, give them cap space to maneuver in the years to come.
Time now for the contract of the week.
All right, we go to the NBA for this, Mike, in our contract of the week, and a guy that is sharing the backcourt, this year, James Harden.
Yeah. So obviously Harden is, an elite player in the league. What's interesting about him right now is we do something called our best value rankings, right? Where we evaluate every player in terms of what they're making versus how they're producing, and we give them a score, so essentially like a Madden score, right? Well, we do this every week, and we list out the top players by position based on, who's the best value going right now at each position. Well, as of right now, 6 weeks into the league, James Harden is the best value shooting guard in the NBA, which is saying something because he's making an average of $30 million a year right now. And that just never happens. I mean, we see players with $5-6 million per year, and generally it's a rookie-based system where the best values come from the lower salaries. This guy's worth $30 million a year, and he's playing at such a high level that he's a best value in the league. Now, that's going to change quickly in 2 years when he's making $42 million per year based on his recent extension. So, this dream isn't going to last forever, but it's a really interesting point. It's a testament to how well he's playing right now, that team is playing right now. And he's, without question, the MVP right now.
My question with this is, how did Oklahoma City, screw it up? You had Harden, you had Durant, and you had Westbrook, and you couldn't keep them all together.
I actually just had this discussion, and really, I don't think it was about money. I think they would have paid him, but they didn't want to play him. They loved him as the sixth man. They loved him in that role, coming in as the second guy in, kind of like the super sub. And obviously, I don't even think he went to find a ton of money. He went to find a starting role. So, I mean, they didn't even identify him as a starting 5 guy at that point. They were that far behind.
Some guys want to be the big gun on a team, right?
That's right.
Well, the interesting common denominator with those 3 was Westbrook, right?
That's right. Both of them needed the ball, so you could see where they couldn't see that coming. But they're both making their own money, and they're both shooting a lot of balls
right now. All right, before we wrap this up, I got something to throw at you guys. I came across this the other day, and SpotTrack.com does not have a celebrity endorser, correct? There is no celebrity athletic endorser to the site, right, Mike?
That's right.
All right, well, I got a guy for you. I found this guy.
Oh, I thought you were about to pitch yourself.
No, not me. He is bounced around the NFL. He is just recently signed to the practice squad of his 6th different NFL team. He has career earnings of just over $360,000, not very much for an NFL, so he may be willing to look for other sources of revenue via an endorsement here with SpotTrack.com. He is a player who graduated from the University of Akron. He's a defensive end, and his name is Nordley Cappy, but they refer to him as Cap. So I'm pushing right now that we start the SpotTrack.com Capcast. I think we can reach out to him. I think he would definitely be up for it. And you and I and all of us would enjoy being able to say welcome to the SpotTrack.com Capcast.
I don't think I can say that more than 3 times. So this isn't going to work.
How could we not align with a player whose name is Cap Cappy? Right? Am I onto something here or what?
Up next, Peter Piper.
So there you go. You, Mike, it's your site. You let us know. But if you want us to, reach out and try to get an endorsement deal with Cap Cappy, I think I'm all for it. So,
thank you, Paul.
You're welcome.
I think you should go with Andy Cap and his pub price, baby. All right, good stuff there. For Mike Giannetti, Paul Peck, I'm Kevin Sylvester. Check out all the info at SpotTrack.com, and we will talk to you next week.